Step one, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step two, get some good, some food in you. Step three, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step four, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
Good morning, and welcome to Good Morning Crypto, where we turn your early hours in the morning into your edge in financial freedom. Today, I've got a few headlines. One of them is going to touch on what I believe is the biggest news for today, and that's going to be Microsoft shareholders voting on whether they believe Microsoft should hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And I've got another headline that I want to touch on a little later in the show. I'm not going to tease that one though, but let's dive on in and get you prepped for some success today, because it's going to be a good day. So we've got Apple, which is sitting up pretty nicely from yesterday, and in the pre-market is continuing some of those gains, up 1.61 from yesterday and up 0.15% in the pre-market right now. We've got Nvidia, which had some sell-off off of the news that China is investigating them under monopoly laws. So they did get a little bit of some sell-off from yesterday, down 2.55% and down 0.55 in the pre-market right now. We do have Berkshire Hathaway, which is sitting down 1.41%, but in the pre-market, taking back some of those losses, up 0.44%. We do have Amazon now putting in some of its first losses since it started its holiday sales, and is down 0.41% from yesterday, but is sitting up just a little bit in the pre-market, 0.25%. We do have Eli Lilly, which is down 2.8% from yesterday, but taking back some of those losses in the pre-market, up 0.8% right now. We have ExxonMobil sitting down just a little bit, down 0.59%, and in the pre-market is up 0.17% right now. Tesla is taking back some of those losses we saw from the beginning of the week, up 0.15%, and in the pre-market is up 0.92%. We do have Microsoft up as well, up 0.55% from yesterday, but in the pre-market looking to take back some of those gains, down 0.49% right now. We do have Google, which is sitting up as well. It is up 0.35% from yesterday, and in the pre-market is doing very nicely, up 2.32% right now. As well as Meta, it is down from yesterday, down 1.64%, but in the pre-market is doing very nicely right now and is up 0.76%. Let's hop over to the crypto side of things. We do have Bitcoin up 0.2%. We have Ethereum up 1.06%. We've got XRP sitting up 0.46. Oh, just changed, up 0.17%. Solana sitting down 0.27%. BNB sitting up 1.19%. We've got Chainlink doing pretty decent on the daily, up a 4.11%. We've got Toncoin sitting up as well, up 1.44%. Shiba Inu is sitting down just a little bit, down a 0.16%. We've got Avalanche up 2.1. Tron Coin is up 4.02% right now. We've got Dogecoin sitting down just a little bit at that 40-cent mark, so still doing decent for Doge, down 1.24. We've got Cardano doing pretty nicely as well, still holding that dollar, up 1.21%. For the economic calendar today, we don't have anything really heavy on today's data. We do have a little bit later in the day the Reuters Taken Index from Japan, which will be coming out at 6 Eastern Time. Other than that, that's really going to be the only thing. We do have the crude oil stock change, which is coming out today at 4:30 Eastern Time. But pretty much a light day today, and mostly going to see preparation for tomorrow's big data, the CPI and inflation data. Let's hop over to the fear and greeds real quick. Let me get over to that. We've got the stock side of things sitting at 49 and neutral. No change on that, which is to be expected when we saw a little bit of sell-off. The market is getting back to that neutral point on the stocks, and we might see some of that change here as we get some of this data. Might see that mixed bag of data be a little bit bullish if your longer term is sitting a little bit high, but your shorter term is looking nice and headed in the right direction. On the crypto side of things, we are also at no change, still in 78 and extreme greed. For your liquidation heat map, we do have liquidity piling up to the top side of us. That hotter spot on the map is going to be 98,339. You do have another lighter hot spot at 98,735, and a range from about 99,100 all the way up to about 99,700. So most of that liquidity on the short term is piling up to the top side of us. If you zoom it on out just a little bit to that 3-day, you're also seeing most of that liquidity is still piling up to the top side. You have some light hot spots down here at that 98,000 range that we talked about on the shorter term, but for your long term, for your 3-day, most of that's sitting up at that $101,000 range. If you zoom it on out just a little bit more, you can kind of see on that weekly, it is still all to the top side of us. Don't really have any hot spots to the bottom. I took that out with those wicks from yesterday. And on a 2-week, most of that is going to be on the more extreme ends of things. You do have it piled up at that $90,000 mark. It's nothing too hot though. And again at that $104,000 range for the top side. Nothing too heavy on that though. So most of that liquidity on the short term is going to be more piled up on the top side, and will kind of drive things once we kind of get some data on Wednesday and Thursday that can kind of send it in that direction. Doesn't mean that we can't go a bit lower in the meantime though. I did want to pull the CME FedWatch tool up. We are sitting at an 86.1% chance for a rate cut, and is kind of not what I was hoping to see, especially with some of the mixed bags of data. If we are heating back up just a little bit with our inflation data, we would want to see more of a pause on things and to kind of keep things cool. We'll just have to see how this all plays out. The market really wants that cut. Let's hop over to the chat real quick. We've got Jesse Gulak in here first with a good morning and a coffee cup. Dante Cabrero in here saying good morning, good morning. STL Coin saying good morning. Dylan VA, good day all. Knox Bill in here with the pink wave in hand. We've got Darren Does Things in here. Good morning, fam, working and lurking. Good morning to you all. Let's hop into the Bitcoin chart real quick and zoom it on out on that time frame back to the 4-hour. Been looking at that 1 hour to kind of see how it's going to respect that trend line. The trend line was drawn on that 1 hour and is off of those candle bodies. You do have a few wicks below it, But on those candle bodies for the 1 hour, it is really respecting that trend line. And we might see another little touch off of that. We do have a 4 hour reversal signal that is shown and some oversold signals as well. That was off of that big flash that we saw down to the bottom side of that trend line, where we very quickly pulled back up and kind of got a nice little bounce off of the top side of this fair value gap and another bounce off of the golden pocket that I had talked about yesterday. We are sitting with some more selling pressure here, though. Really waiting for that high time liquidity to really drag from that weekly that we saw that was green yesterday and bleed over into these lower time frames. It is overall bullish. As you see, we are making a pattern of higher lows, but we're really waiting to see this support made on that platinum pocket that I have drawn out, and that's going to be that 99,000 that we have really struggled to hold on Bitcoin. So just waiting for that liquidity to really come back in and rescue us. I don't think we're going to see that today. We might see a quick move up, but on the overall, I'm believing that we'll be holding this trend line very nicely and waiting on the data to really move the market in either direction. If you zoom in on a little bit to that 1 hour, as you can kind of see here, if you zoom on out, we do have nice candle body touches on this trend line here back in November, and again here at the beginning of December. And as you can kind of see from yesterday, the candle bodies really touched on that trend line very nicely. We do have the move off of this, which has been decent. We are waiting for that liquidity. As you can kind of see here, we're making some equal highs off of these candle bodies. They're not exactly equal highs, but they are very close equal highs and are looking at like a local resistance at 97,900, almost $98,000 there. If we can make some support in this range and have some liquidity start moving back into the market, it would be nice to see that range turned from a local resistance into some support. We are going to need to turn that into some resistance. 98,000 is kind of a psychological number as well. It's not that big, 10000 psychological, but when you see those breakdown points on the thousands, they are kind of a psychological number. So we will need to turn this into some support and make a little bit of a higher high. We are kind of at the point where we are bumping against that right now. If you zoom it on in just a little bit more on that 15-minute chart, you can kind of see here we got some topping signals on your 15-minute and a curve on your MACD line, which is looking to cross that indicator line on the top side of things. You did have the liquidity start running out here and is back to the light green. So seeing another little touch here on your support line that I have drawn out would be a nice little move to the downside before trying to push back up and regain some strength. Other than that, we do have that platinum pocket to the top side of us, which we really might see us try to push back to at that 99,000 mark. So just really waiting to see that liquidity start bleeding over from the top side and moving up from those shorter term time frames into your higher time frames. The 15-minute is looking a little bit red, but you do have those higher time frames above your 4 hour, which are still decently green here. Gonna be up above that 1 day. The 1 day is a little bit light red, but your weekly, as we had talked about yesterday, was starting to tick green, And if you zoom it on in just a little bit to that 2-day, you do have that 2-day being very green as well. So just looking for liquidity from the top side to kind of bleed over to the shorter time frames, and the liquidity on that short-term time frame to go back green again. Let me say hello to the chat. I did see a few other people sliding on in here this morning. We have Soul Reed with the flexing emojis, and Arsan246 saying good morning. Let me get that article pulled up that I was wanting to take a look at, and it touches on our headline for today. Bitcoin's price forecast. Amazon shareholders advocate for BTC adoption among Microsoft's investment vote. Let me zoom it on in just a little bit. There's a lot of ads on this, so try to just disregard Drake there, trying to push stake. We've got Bitcoin's price today, 98,500. Bitcoin edges down 2.5%, trading below 98,500 on Monday after rallying 4% and reaching a new all-time high of 104,088 last week. As BTC reaches its $100,000 milestone, big corporations showed interest in the largest digital asset by market capitalization. National Center for Public Policy Research shared over the weekend an Amazon shareholders proposal urging the company to consider investing in Bitcoin as a reserve asset to beat inflation and boost shareholder value. This comes after the NCPPR submitted a similar report from Microsoft shareholders last month that also called for the tech firm to invest in Bitcoin. Bitcoin sees corporate interest from Amazon and Microsoft. Bitcoin's price declines on Monday after hitting a significant milestone of $100,000 and reaching a new all-time high of $104.88 on Thursday. For those who have been in the industry for some time, this feat seemed unimaginable in the early days, analysts at the New York Digital Investment Group said in a weekly report. Only 2 years ago, the entire industry was ailing in the wake of the collapse of foundational institutions such as Genesis, FTX, BlockFi, Celsius, Three Arrows, Voyager, as well as Luna USDT digital asset. Bitcoin had fallen under 15.5K at its lowest point, well below the previous cycle's high, something it had never done before, they said. The recent surge has caught the attention of big corporations like Microsoft and Amazon into Bitcoin. Last week, Michael Saylor's co-founder of MicroStrategies, presented to Microsoft's board why the tech giant should buy Bitcoin. Microsoft shareholders are scheduled to vote on a proposal to add BTC to its balance sheet on December 10th, which is today. That vote is going to be at 8:30 Pacific time. So just keep that in mind. A little bit later today, we will see that vote going from Microsoft. According to the report, from QCP Capital, if the proposal passes, it will not only be bullish for BTC, but also for other investments, the report notes. Still, Microsoft's board members are against the proposal. And this has a lot to do with the fact that Bill Gates is very against cryptocurrency. He finds them very speculative. Another big name has also joined the move, according to the National Center for Public Policy Research report. Amazon shareholders are urging the company to consider investing in Bitcoin as a reserve asset to beat inflation and boost shareholder price. The report further explains how MicroStrategy, which holds Bitcoin on its balance sheet, outperformed Amazon stock by 537% in the previous year. Though Bitcoin is currently a volatile asset, as Amazon stock has been at times throughout its history, corporations have a responsibility to maximize shareholder value over the long term and short term. Diversifying the balance sheet by including some Bitcoin solves this problem without taking on too much volatility. At minimum, Amazon should evaluate the benefits of holding even just 5% of its assets in Bitcoin. That is a massive number there, as you do have Amazon being a massive company. 5% would be a large investment into Bitcoin and would really bolster that price. We will kind of have to see if this proposal comes to a vote for Amazon. Institutional demands for Bitcoin remain strong. Looking at Bitcoin's institutional flows, demand rose last week. According to CoinGlass, Bitcoin spot exchange traded funds data, there was a total net flow of 2.77 billion last week compared to 136.5 million outflow the previous week. And an exclusive interview with FX Street market making firm Aros managing director Li Shi said that based on past trends, Bitcoin is still relatively early on in the bullish cycle when compared to other years in which there have been a halving event. I can't predict that timing, but there are plenty of reasons to be very bullish for the remainder of this year, the 3 weeks remaining, as well as going into 2025, he said. I'm gonna kind of ignore the last part of this, which is more of a forecast on the highs that we might see on Bitcoin, because I'm not the biggest fan of doing price predictions on assets. It's really kind of hard to gauge that. You can go off past trends, you can go off how the market has moved before, but you kind of have to take the market at where it's at and just make moves off of the current data that you have, and not worry too much about where it might go at the end of a cycle, because that's really hard to gauge. You don't know how many people are really going to be holding this, how many people are really going to be swinging at highs to lows. You don't really know where things are going to lie, and you don't really know how much adoption we're really going to get. We still do have, as that article had said, the FTX collapse and things like that from last cycle, which are kind of holding over crypto's head right now. It will depend on how much institutional adoption we get, because I don't believe these companies are going to be trying to hold Bitcoin for just a short amount of time to turn around and sell it. It will be more of a long-term investment. And it's really going to depend on retail as how high this price can go. And that's why I'm not the biggest fan of those price predictions. I do have targets along the way where I will take profit, but overall, I just go with the market. And once we start getting exhausted on those higher term time frames and we start seeing some of those indicators that we might be losing steam, even if we haven't hit those targets that I want to see, I take profit, because you never go broke taking profit. So if anyone has any assets they'd like me to take a look at today, drop those in the chat for me, and I will take a look at them when I get the chance to. I did have a few things I wanted to touch on the TradFi side of things before I hop into that other article I have pulled up, and then we'll take a look at those altcoin requests. I did take a look at gold yesterday, and I told y'all that I would like to see us make some support on that 382 line, and that's pretty much exactly what happened. We saw this bounce here about midday back up to this 50% line on our fib extension, and we are now sitting right there at the top side on that 50% line. We did bump up against the top of that fair value gap, and for a brief second managed to go above it before looking to really make some support there. If we are unable to hold that range, I would look at a brief break back into our fair value gap before we really make some higher lows here. As you can kind of see here, we are making a slight new trend here. As you can kind of see, we've got this potential trend line below us, and would be a point where we could really see a little bounce here in our fair value gap and pull back up above this 50% line to make some strength. I will uncolor our fair value gap as we have finally closed that out and are waiting for more liquidity to really come in and save us. You are seeing some topping signals from here and back here as we went red to light red, back to red, and we are still light red even though we are sitting above that 50% line on a fib extension. If you zoom it on in just a little bit there to that 15-minute chart, you can kind of see we've got that divergence there that's playing out, and the liquidity's still sitting nice and green, but is looking a little bit flat. So just looking for that next bouncing point. I do think we will see a little bit of some downside action on gold before we really push back up above this 50% fib and really reclaim that as some support. We haven't been here in quite a while. It was back in November where we really saw a brief push up above it, but were unable to turn that into a just a little bit. If let me swap over to the SPX. Sorry about that. I was already a little bit ahead of myself on that one. If you zoom things out on the S&P, you do have us sitting right at the bottom of our CME gap, which is that 6,049, which we finally closed yesterday. We got that wick right below it on that 4-hour. If you zoom it on in just a little bit, you can kind of see here we're sitting right on the bottom side of the S&P, looking to really make some support around this area so that we can send things back on up to the upside. Let me uncolor that one so it's got a black background and we know that that has been closed. We're looking for that bounce area in on the S&P. I do have a little more downside that I think is coming on that. As you can kind of see, we do have the reversal signal shown, your oversold signal shown, but the prime oscillator hasn't really got that curvature. Your MACD just crossed your zero line. So looking for a little more downside, you could definitely see a bouncing on that golden pocket at that 6,043. We do have another potential bouncing point below that where we saw equal candle bodies and a wick at 6,035. Would really need to maintain some of this price around this range. And if we're unable to, we do have this fair value gap that is sitting right there and could really pull us back down to that 6,000 price range if we're unable to hold. You do have the Russell 2000, which is breaking below that CME gap that I had pointed out from yesterday. Let's uncolor that as it is now closed as well. A bunch of your TradFi is closing some of these, so looking to make some support under a bunch of these ranges. You do have your let's zoom on out. You do have your 50% line, which is sitting right below us here, and would be a nice little area to see some support made, but could see us go just a little bit under that. You do have this area right here at 2,364, which is a nice area to see another little bounce if we move below this 50% fib line. So really looking for that next bouncing point on some of your TradFi assets, and might continue to see some of that sell-off that we started to see Monday. Really waiting for that reversal. You do have that mixed bag as we had went over on the stock heat map from earlier. Other than that, I don't really have any other TradFi assets that I was wanting to take a look at. Those were the big ones that I had kind of wanted to touch on for the day. Let me hop over to the chat real quick and say hello to the new people that showed up for today. We have Duality Crypto saying hello. We got Alexandra G in here, the mod queen, saying good morning to everyone. She's listening in. I assume she's probably getting ready for work and drinking some coffee. We've got Soul Reed asking for ONDO. Let me add that on my notes so I can take a look at that later. If you have a certain exchange you'd like me to take a look at that on, go ahead and drop that in the chat for me. I have Link, Soul, and Clean Spark. If I have the time, I will take a look at all three. Let me make a little note of all of that. We've got Soul as well. I was taking a look at Soul this morning. It is in a decent little flag pattern. It don't really have the top side resistance line that has had 3 touches yet, but the bottom side has got those 3 touches on a decent little support line. If you have any certain exchange that you'd like me to take a look at Link and Soul on, drop that in the chat for me. Otherwise, I will just go with my overall chart that kind of gauges the whole market. We have Valagame saying, when are Microsoft votes results going to be out? They haven't really said when those results are going to be out. That vote is at 8:30 Pacific time, so a little bit later in the day. For the rest of the US, I would assume that they will be dropping those results sometime either today or tomorrow. It kind of takes some time sometimes for them to really put out what that data is going to be, and they haven't said when they're going to release those results yet. But I would look at end of market today or the beginning of market tomorrow to kind of gauge that news. You might see it come out after market where they really announce that so that they don't swing the stock too hard in either direction going into tomorrow. It will be very limited on what the price action you can see in post-market and pre-market, because those are more private sellers and would allow for, if someone sees that as a negative or positive, to not really move the stock price too much and allow them to make their own little moves there. We have Just a Call Me AI saying howdy. Good morning, good morning. Hope you're having a great Tuesday so far. Let me hop over to that other article I had pulled up, and that's touching on the Bank of Japan's rate decision. Bank of Japan should hike given risk of falling behind, top academic says. Let's zoom it on just a little bit more so you can kind of read some of that with me. The Bank of Japan should raise its benchmark interest rate early, and it faces the risk it has already fallen behind the curve, according to a prominent economics professor who was an advisor to the Prime Minister. The Bank of Japan had better move early while it can, said Hiroshi Yoshikawa, professor emeritus at the University of Tokyo. In a sense, they may already be behind the curve, he said in an interview Monday. Yokishiwa has been a close friend to the Bank of Japan's governor Kazuo Ueda for almost six decades, spoke amid intense market focus on whether a rate hike will happen next week or next month. Expectations for a December hike has cooled after the central bank took an unusual scheduling move Monday afternoon, but Yokishiwa's comments point to the factors that the Bank of Japan could still use as reasons for raising the lowest rate among developed nations next Thursday. At 2.5%, Japan's rate is exceptionally low, Yokishiwa said, speaking right before the Bank of Japan set up a speech with Deputy Governor Rozoyo Yomino in January. Unless there is a major shift in the economy, it's natural to lift the rate. It's not hawkish, it's reasonable. Japan's inflation has been running more or less at the same level in the US and Europe this year. Given that reality, Japan's borrowing costs are too low, Yoshikawa said. Although, he added, the rate doesn't seem to be quite as high as in those economies. Japan's nominal neutral rate is probably around 1%, he said. Yokishiwa, who is also a member of the committee that determines Japan's economic cycle, said that the Bank of Japan may face an economic downturn or even crisis in the course of nominalization. Japan's current expansionary period started in May 2020 and is already longer than most growth periods in post-war era. That there's a non-negligible chance that the Bank of Japan will be forced to cut rates down the road, Yoshikawa said. If the rate is at 0.25%, it can only go down to 0%, so it's the right thing to do to raise it when you can. In an interview with local media last month, Ueda made a similar point that it's better to be able to lower the rate when faced with a recession, as an unconventional policy measures can't be a complete substitute for standard rate policy. Traders see about a 28% chance of the Bank of Japan rate hike this month, down from 66% at the end of last month. Citigroup shifted its rate move forecast to January from December on Monday, saying there isn't much reason for the Bank of Japan to rush. On Monday, the Bank of Japan also took an unusual step of scheduling a speech and a press conference with Deputy Governor Himono in January before its policy decision. That theoretically gives the central bank an opportunity to communicate more with the markets right before potentially hiking rates. The yen has weakened against the dollar since the announcement. Japan's data so far have shown that the economy has performed in line with the Bank of Japan's projections. Economic growth for the third quarter was revised up according to the Cabinet Office report released Monday, while the Bank of Japan's key inflation gauge has stayed at or above its 2% price target for more than 2.5 years. The Bank of Japan is basically saying that there isn't enough inflation yet, Yoshikawa said. I don't know if anyone else thinks that way among the Japanese public. Yoshikawa, who is also a counselor for the Bank of Japan, stressed that he has no inside information and his views are his own. After getting to know each other in high school, Yoshikawa and Ueda both went to the University of Tokyo and eventually became professors there. Yoshikawa earned his doctorate in economics at Yale University and was advised by Nobel laureate James Tobin. The Bank of Japan seems a little too cautious, Yoshikawa said. The most important thing about monetary policy is nimbleness. If the economic situation changes after rate hikes, you can lower it. You shouldn't see that as a failure. And this is kind of a nice thing for Japan if they do end up holding that in December while the US does another rate cut. and does that cut later, it kind of opens that door, that open door for the carry trade to be unwound just a little bit. As you will see, the dollar weaken uh, if they do end up hiking those rates after we've cut rates, because that cutting will weaken the dollar just a little bit. And if they turn around right on the back end and hike those rates, it gives some extra strength to that yen coming into next year and opens that door of possibility to unwind more of the carry trade, and might be that move that we've been looking for to the downside to really stack back up. I know we do talk about a lot on Piper Academy about those dips that we see during the bull market. Those, as we've seen in the past, 30% dips or 40% dips. I don't think we will really see that be such a large margin this time, as you have more and more institutional adoption coming in to really bolster the price. You do have ETFs this time around as well, which are very also bolstering the price as well. So seeing about a 20% dip off of things would be more the gauge. We did see last time, I believe, when the carry trade unwound, it was about a 22% dip off of the price of Bitcoin. And that would be kind of beginning of January 2025, and would really be in line with some of those moves we've seen in past cycles. So decent little buying point if that is to be coming our way in January, and they do end up holding the rates where they're at and waiting to raise those rates a little bit later. As I had talked about earlier last month, it was that 60% chance that they hike while we cut, which would have been very neutral for both countries and would kind of keep capital where it's at. But if we do have that cut here and the hike there later, that opens the door for that move of liquidity out of the US and back into the yen, as the yen will see some strength off of that move. I had the Dixie pulled up and kind of touches on that point. As we're coming up to a rate decision, you are seeing us can make some strength here on our 50% line on a fib retracement, and are really looking to pull above this high that we had seen from back in September 2023, and we haven't been at for a while. You saw an immediate rejection off of that point. So looking to make some strength here, which is also going to be a thing where if we do see that rate cut coming in December, will weaken the dollar just a little bit and kind of pull us back down here to some of these lows that we had seen. You do have your 102 range being a nice area where we can make some more support if we do end up seeing that rate cut. We are getting a lot of topping signals here on your higher term time frames for the dollar. So kind of in line with some of the rate decisions that we'll be seeing here in about a week and a half. So keep your eye out for that. We will be seeing some data as well coming out this week, the PPI and inflation rate year over year and core inflation. That will be Wednesday and Thursday, and will could kind of bolster the dollar just a little bit before we see the rate decision the next week. Let me hop over to some of those alt requests that we had. I had ONDO, Link, Sol, and CleanSpark. So before I do that, let's say hello to the chat. We do have Valagame saying thank you, and Jesse Gulek saying good morning crypto, needing coffee for sure. I've actually had a pot and a half of coffee today. I twinged my back, so it's kind of what during my morning workout this morning. So it's kind of throwing me off my game. So just looking for some more coffee later in the day to maybe counteract some of the distraction that my body's giving me. All right, I've got Soul pulled up. I was taking a look at that before the show, and as you can kind of see here, we've got this platinum pocket on a fib extension, which we are looking to break below. Jesse Gulak said just woke up. So maybe you're needing more coffee. Maybe a band-aid in here. Good morning, good morning. Hugs to Alexandra G, the girl who never sleeps. All right, let me zoom it on in here a little bit and pull it up to a higher time frame and take a look at that 4 hour. As you can kind of see here, we've got our reversal signals that are showing up on that prime oscillator. You do have money flow still decently red though. Your oversold signals are showing up over and over again and are really looking to make some touches here on our trend line. Right below that platinum pocket. You do have us sitting right below it with some more downside pressure on some shorter time frames. Your prime oscillator is getting some curvature and your MACD is waiting for that curvature to come in on the bottom side of things. We are sitting below the zero line with some decent width from that indicator line. So really needing to see that cross coming in on that higher term time frame to pull that price back up, as well as some liquidity to kind of rescue us. I do think that we will see another little touch on this trend line here. If you zoom it on in just a little bit, that is where that trend line is drawn from. It is on that 1 hour as well. We've got several candle body touches back here along your trend line. Boom, boom, boom. Another one right here. Boom. As you can kind of see from before that, we came close to our trend line, got wicks below it, didn't manage to touch it, and really got that touch on the trend line right after that. So we got to move off of it and pulled right back down to get our candle bodies on that trend line. Same thing back here when we pulled back down to it and then end up touching on that trend line, got a little move off of it before we pulled back down and really got those candle bodies on that 1 hour chart to really touch that trend line before we blasted on out of that range. We got those wicks right on that platinum pocket there to the bottom side of that trend line before moving sideways for a little while. And we are now kind of right back into this position where our trend line is sitting right below that platinum pocket, and we don't have any candle body touches here on that 1 hour. Your liquidity for your 1 hour chart is also looking red, but it's kind of at that point where it's not heavy red, and it's also getting kind of flat and are waiting for that curvature back down to the downside of things. So just waiting for that liquidity to kind of pull back in. As you can kind of see on your 1 hour, you've got the curvature on your prime oscillator as well as the curvature to kind of point back down on your MACD as well. Could just end up being a little pull back to our indicator line here before seeing a bounce off of it to the top side. And that would be right in line with a move off of this trend line that I have drawn out. Let me zoom those out just a little bit so we can kind of see what that 15-minute is going to look like without having to move things around too much. As you can kind of see here, we did get a move in liquidity coming back in with some buying pressure, but it's really faltering there at that platinum pocket at $216. We are right below it and not seeing too heavy selling pressure on that. We are coming to the bottom side of our MACD We just broke below that zero line and to the bottom side of our indicator line as well. But seeing these reversal signals start playing on that prime oscillator and really waiting for that liquidity to come in and give us that second reversal signal, we do like I do like to see multiple back-to-back reversal signals before I really have some faith on this prime oscillator. I have seen it play out multiple times where you get that first reversal signal, but your liquidity is not really there to kind of reverse things, and you wait for that second or sometimes third on these shorter term time frames to really see that reversal signal play out to the move on the upside or the downside if the reversal signal is on the top. So looking to get that bounce off of our trend line to the bottom side and really move back up to this platinum pocket, that $216 range, and make some nice support there. As you can kind of see, that support is not holding strong on that 216 and looks like it's going to be sending things just a little bit lower. We have all set in here saying good morning BC and fam. Good morning, all set. Hope you're having a great day so far. Let's hop over to ONDO and take a look at how that chart. Oh, I don't know why my Alexa just chimed in. I didn't say anything to you. All right, let's hop over to ONDO. Let's see if I've got a chart for it. It's been a while since I know I've taken a look at ONDO. There we go. Yeah, it's been a fat minute since I've taken a look at ONDO. As you can kind of see, if I zoom it on out just a little bit, I had a fib retracement drawn from the lows back here, from the start of things back in February of 2024 all the way to the top here, and we are now above that range. ONDO is a newer project, so to find some of these new points that we're going to be looking for, I will need to draw a new fib. So let's get that drawn out. We do have a trend-based fib extension that can be drawn out from low to high to low. Let's get the right low there. There we go. And we're sitting right above that platinum pocket there. So let's lock that one and draw a fib retracement as well to kind of see those other points that we can go. Go to the low before the move up and top that out at the highs there. There we go. And looking for some moves to the upside and finding that bouncing point. So let's lock that one and make sure our other is locked. Both of those are locked. Let's hide our trend-based fib extension real quick and kind of drop it down to a lower time frame and see what the 4-hour is showing us. As you can kind of see, our money flow is still decently red here. It looks like we are rejecting off of that 236 and are going to be pulling back a little bit further. We do have the 382 being a decent point where we're seeing some buying pressure. As you see, we got some wicks below it, but they were very, very quickly bought up. Let's zoom it on back out to that daily and kind of draw. I guess I'll need to be on that 4-hour to draw that fair value gap there. As you can kind of see, if we take our tool, draw that rectangle, you've got a fair value gap sitting from below the 50% line on a fib retracement and to the top side above that 382. As you can kind of see, looking to potentially close this fair value gap. Let me lock that so that we don't move nothing. We are sitting right inside that fair value gap, and if you zoom it on in there, look at how nicely that top side lines up with the top side of our fair value gap. Definitely looking to close this out here and could potentially see that bounce up around that 50% line on a retracement after closing that fair value gap, as our liquidity is extremely red on our 4-hour and not seeing too big moves to the upside and staying light red on that, while our MACD is on the bottom side and getting more curvature to look like a rejection off of our indicator line. Looking at that close, we do have that 50% line being $1.27, where the bottom side of our fair value gap is going to be right below that at $1.25. So decent little bouncing point to the bottom side of us. Looking like a trend of lower highs and lower lows, and just going to try to see where that reversal is going to be. Going to zoom it on in just a little bit. Take a look at that 1 hour. As you can kind of see, our liquidity came back in to kind of pull us back up to that 236 and was very quickly exhausted. It is light green and moving sideways. We've got some nice reversal signals there on your prime oscillator, as well as heavy curvature on your MACD, looking to pull back down to that 0 line and potentially cross things to the negative side. So definitely seeing some selling pressure here on ONDO. Let's zoom it on in to see what that 15-minute is showing us. As you can kind of see here, the prime oscillator is at a point where it is extremely red, but not showing any reversal signals. Your money flow is going light red on your prime oscillator as well, and your MACD is getting some space from our indicator line, pointed extreme to the downside and looking to cross that 0 line. So definitely looking for that next bouncing point to the bottom side. You do have your midline of your fair value gap being $1.47. Definitely see some buying pressure at that 382 as well at $1.43. But I'd really look for this fair value gap to be closed if we're going to continue to see some selling pressure in the market today. And that would leave a move to the upside being a nice little possibility for ONDO. Let's hide that fib retracement. Take a look at the fib extension on that. As you can kind of see, you do have some other bouncing points that we could kind of see here along our fair value gap along the way down. You do have your $1.51 being our platinum pocket. As you can kind of see here, we got decent little bounces off of that and moves to the upside on the way down. And we do have our golden pocket, which is sitting right to the bottom side of things at $1.29. So seeing a little bounce along that point before we try to close out that fair value gap would also be a little move that we could see on shorter time frames. But I do believe that the more macro side of things is going to be to the downside, as you're seeing things kind of be exhausted here. You're getting some selling pressure on your higher term time frames, and the daily as well is looking like it's topping out here on money flow coming on in. So just something to keep in mind on ONDO. Let's take a look at Link real quick. That was requested at right at 6:30. So I do have to go and run to work. I gotta mine that fiat so we can buy more crypto. That's the name of the game for me. So let's swap it on over to the outro screen. Thank you to everyone that tuned in today. I appreciate every single one of you for showing up nice and early and getting that alpha for the day. We do have our morning market report with with OC Guy and Piper coming on at 9:30 Eastern Time, and make sure to tune into that. Hit that like button for them, and show up for that alpha because they drop a lot of alpha daily. We do have our new show, the Trade Academy, with Trade Intuition. And if you haven't been tuning into that and you need some advice or on how to do TA or questions on TA, he is the man to ask. That is a 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We do have our Crypto Nightcap that comes on at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time with TradeFly and FD White. Make sure to tune into that one as well. Hit the like button for them. If you haven't been tuning in to that Markets After Dark with Lunar Beaches Crypto, go ahead and give the last one a watch. And and tune in if you are awake that late. That's 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and give that a watch. Give that man a like. Hit that like button for him as well. Other than that, everyone, make sure to keep your eye out for that Microsoft vote.